Preservation Board meeting on Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Dashiell?
Here.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Member Young?
Here.
Member Hurley?
Here.
Chair Lowry?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so first off, does anybody have any items they'd like to add to the agenda?
Just an update from the museum.
Okay, we'll call that 5E, Museum Update. Anybody else? Mr. Barry, anything?
If staff could give an update on 100 Passer Girl Way.
That will be under F, Update 100 Pastor Girl Way, okay. Anything else? Okay, with that, I will make a motion to approve today's agenda.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Approve.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, this is a portion of the meeting where we will take audience comments. If you want to comment on something that's on the agenda, you can wait and comment at that time. This is really the point that if you have some general comments you might want to make, you could do that. Does any members of the audience have any comments they want to make generally? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the approval of minutes. Has anybody had an opportunity to read the proposed minutes from last month's meeting?
I did, and I make a motion to approve the minutes from September the 4th, 2025.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And now we're moving on to the number 4, which is the action items. I would ask the clerk to place anyone under oath that plans on testifying or giving information today if you want to speak. So if you are going to do that, please rise and
Thank you.
face the clerk.
Anyone who will be speaking or testifying before the board needs to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give to the board is truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, the first action item is local historic designation number 24080, and that's for the residents at 102 23rd Avenue. Ms. Rossetti?
Good afternoon, Lynn Rossetti, consulting or contract planner for the city of St. Pete Beach. This first case is located at 102 23rd Avenue in Paso Grill. And let me get this going.
Excuse me, Lynn?
Yes.
There's been a request that we talk louder today. There's somebody in the audience that has trouble hearing,
Okay.
including me.
I will be glad. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So,
The other button, Lynn.
yeah, okay. Well, I'm not sure why it's not going.
Try to click that.
It's just not going. Technical difficulties, sorry.
This doesn't seem to be on. I don't think this is charged. Is there a piece that fell off?
Piece of what?
I'll advance it. Just tell me when to move forward.
Okay. Okay, this request is for a local historic designation at 102 23rd Avenue, case number 24080. The applicant is John Gottwald, and he lives at this address. The request is for a local historic designation of the single-family residential structure at 102 23rd Avenue. This is a slide showing the aerial. Next slide. And this shows what the house looks like today. When I went out in the field the other day to take a look at the house, I did notice that it had one solar panel on the roof, but it wasn't sitting on the roof. It was elevated up from the roof, and I will address that as part of my presentation. And if you'll go back 1 minute, Brandon.
Sure.
If you take a look at the door, we will be discussing the door as well. So at this point, I'm going to get into my presentation. The property owner of the single-family residential property located in Paso Grill is requesting a local landmark designation for this property. Interestingly, this house was barged to Paso Grill from Gulfport in approximately 1951 by Mary Williams. The Florida Master Site File indicates that 1951 was the construction date, so pretty well confirms that 1951 date that it showed up on Paso Grill. This is a single-family residential frame vernacular structure, and it's in the Paso Grill National Register Historic District, where it's a contributing structure within the district. The Florida Master Site File also has a construction date of 1951, and this property is considered a contributing structure within the district. During the 2015 Paso Grill survey update, it was determined that this property definitely contributed to the National Register Historic District in both its architectural style and integrity. Staff is recommending that this single-family residential structure located at 102 23rd Avenue be recognized as a locally designated historic landmark property as requested by the property owner because of its characteristic style and other residential, it's characteristic of other residential properties found in the Paso Grill National Register Historic District. The applicant has moved forward. Actually, this property reflects the architectural character and integrity of the Paso Grill National Register Historic District, and it reflects the broad cultural, economic, and social history of Paso Grill and St. Pete Beach. One thing that we would want to bring up is that the door of the property is very characteristic of this style of architecture, and the property owner was suggesting doing a different type of door, and we would suggest that a new door would be fine, but it really should reflect the character of the historic property. So I know Brandon has seen what they were proposing for the door, and I have not. So I would ask you, Brandon, maybe to chime in here.
Sure, I can give a bit more background on this case. So this had originally come in last year, right after the storms, that the owner was looking at having the home historically designated to take advantage of the floodplain variance or the waiver on the substantial improvement value that we have available. They did decide to move forward with the renovations. They were able to keep them under the 50% substantial improvement cap. They are now moving forward after they've received their permit to designate the structure as a local historic resource. The only frontage exterior change that is being made under the renovation is the change out of that door. Everything else is interior. It is going to a large single light door. They, of course, have the fan light, the more characteristic of the colonial style there. It doesn't necessarily need to keep the fan light, but that does, according to staff, exemplify the structure that it's inset in. So we just ask that the owner take a look at potentially a different door style. They are able to move forward with the single light door if they would like, but we would like to bring that back as a certificate of appropriateness request at a future meeting if they choose to move forward. That's all I had to add.
Okay, so the staff analysis is that staff supports the application to locally designate 102 23rd Avenue as a historic property. Staff finds that it reflects the architectural character and integrity of the Pass the Grille National Register Historic District, and it reflects the broad cultural, economic, and social history of Pass the Grille and St. Pete Beach. And for those reasons, staff is recommending approval of the local historic designation of the residential property located at 102 23rd Avenue. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any updated photographs? It looks like the last photographs we have are from 2015. Is there
I
anything?
did not have any updated,
It looks almost identical,
but it does,
I mean,
except
beautifully maintained. I go by it every day, and I always look, and it's always beautiful and impeccable.
it's only that one solar panel that's sticking up there, sort of like a billboard, and it's on top of the roof, but it's not laying on the roof like you usually see solar panels.
I think
So,
this one that we're seeing now is a newer one. It's a different fence, and it does show the solar panel.
Yes.
oh, okay.
And do we know if the door that's in these photographs was the original door?
I don't know if it was the original door.
The blue door? The blue doors?
So just so I'm clear on the solar panel, that's just a comment. There's no reflection of whether that's going to change historic designation, right? That's what I assume. And Brandon, you said something about coming back for a certificate if they don't pick another door? Is that what you said?
If they were to go with the same or a similar style of door, I don't feel that would need to come back. But if they were to go with, and I don't have an example of it, but through the renovation permit, it's a large single light door. It's mostly glass, and we would like that to come back for a certificate of appropriateness. That's the same we would
Gotcha. I
take
understand
anywhere
what
else
you're saying.
there.
Okay. So if, and just to go forward, if they didn't want to change the door and it came back, we would have the option of saying, of not giving them a certificate of appropriateness, right?
Correct. Any exterior modification that's significant.
Because that's a
So,
significant part of the exterior.
Yes.
That door would be.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to, ma'am, if you're going to talk, come up and that's okay. Come on up and approach and talk at the podium, and please state your name for the record, please.
I'm Joan Walker, and I live a few blocks from John, and I'm trying to understand what's going on and what he's saying to me. Apparently, a new door has been ordered,
Okay.
and it's identical, the same glass and everything that's on there now.
Okay.
Perfect.
So-
And,
Right.
and is there
Ask him to
anything,
let us know when he's got it, and you need to check it, or,
that's great. And is there anything else? This is a pretty cut and dry
yeah, I don't.
designation or anything else anybody you want to add or the owner wants to
Really
add
happy
about
with
it?
He's not hearing any of this,
Okay.
Okay.
so, but he's reading, and I think
Okay.
he's real happy with it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Anybody have any comments on this at all? Okay. With that being said, anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve local historic designation number 24080, located at 102 23rd Avenue.
I'll second it.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. Now we move on to action item 4B, which is a local historic designation number 25102 for the residents at 3105 South DeBazin Avenue. Mr. Martinez?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm trying to this thing's being funny. Good afternoon, Board Member, Mr. Chair, board members, Gil Martinez, Community Development. Before you today is a request for local historic designation for the property located at 3105 South Basin Avenue. It is case number 25102. The applicants are Jeffrey Todd and Holly Jenkins. The property address, once again, is at 3105 South Basin Avenue, and it's a request for local historic designation of a single-family residential structure. Here we have a survey as well as an aerial photo of the property. Some historical images going back to 2019, 2008. Interior features of the property. Beautiful terrazzo floors throughout the structure. Some of the character-defining features: mid-century block construction, 1955. Terrazzo floors, open floor plan. It's located in the historic subdivision of the Don Cesar neighborhood, and it reflects post-war architectural and community development trends. Staff supports this application to locally designate 3105 South Basin Avenue as a historic building. Staff finds that the building is significant in the following areas. A, it exemplifies and reflects the broad cultural, political, economic, and social history of the city, and it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or period.
Bless you, Holly.
Staff's recommendation is a motion to approve case number 25102 for local historic designation of the single-family structure at 3105 South Basin Avenue. I can answer any questions if you like. The applicant, Ms. Holly Jenkins, is here to take any questions you may have as well.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Martinez?
I do not.
Okay. Ms. Jenkins, do you want to come up and speak?
I would just like to say that my husband and I are trying to preserve as many homes in this area that we possibly can, so they're not torn down or razed. And that is our goal with this house, which we'll be moving into.
Right. Okay. Well, I would say thank you for that. I think it's a really neat design. It's almost kind of Frank Lloyd Wright-ish, isn't it? Kind of. Like, there's not a lot of those mid-century houses don't really have that roof line like that, and that's
Right.
really cool. So,
Right.
anybody have any questions for Ms. Jenkins?
Do you know if that front door was original or if it
That
was?
is not the original front door. Actually, the front door on that was just a slab. We purchased it from a lady almost a year ago, and I chose that door because it does look period correct.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful house.
I love it. I want that in our design book.
I can tell you where to get it.
Okay. I have a question. Did you get any flood damage from Helene?
Yes, there was flood damage.
Not much, though. So I kind of asked that because I know you're not quite on the water, but you're
Right.
kind of lower.
There was, yes.
Because the floors, of course, look beautiful.
We had them cleaned and prepared and saved.
All right, really good.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Move to approve local historic designation for case number 25102 for the residents at 3105 South DeBasin Avenue.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to 4C. That is the local historic designation number 25103 for 3207 South DeBasin Avenue. Mr. Martinez?
Good afternoon, Board. Once again, local historic designation request for 3207 South DeBasin Avenue, case number 25103. The applicants are Tolly Beach Development LLC. Property address, once again, 3207 De Basin. Request is for local historic designation of a single-family residential structure. Here you will see a survey of the property along with an aerial photo. Some current photos of the property. One is provided by staff, other one provided by the applicant. 2019 image, and the latest image we could find was on Google Maps dating back to 2008. Its current interior conditions, it's under renovation. Character defining features with this property, it's a mid-century coastal block construction dating to 1950, low-pitched gable roof, open floor plan, large windows, and a wood-burning fireplace. Reflects post-war architecture and community development trends. Staff supports this application to locally designate 3207 De Basin Avenue as a historic building. Staff finds that the building is significant in the following areas. It exemplifies or reflects the broad cultural, political, economic, or social history of the city, and it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or period. Staff recommends a motion to approve case number 25103 for local historic designation of the single-family structure at 3207 South De Basin Avenue. I'm here to take any questions, and so is the applicant.
All right, no questions? Does the applicant want to speak again? You don't have to. I'm just saying, you know, if I had known it was you were the same, I probably would have said do it at the same time, but, you know.
I can just say we're currently working with Architect to bring this house back to what it once was. But work has not started yet.
Okay.
It's all in the plans, but we want to keep it the same just as the other.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
Again, I really like that other door.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? All right. I'll make a motion on this one. I will make a motion for a local historic designation on case number 25103 for the home at 3207 South De Basin Avenue.
I'll second it.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith,
Yes.
Member Daschle,
Yes.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Now, on to 4D, local historic designation number 25105 for 7100 Boca Ciega Drive. Ms. Rossetti?
The property owner is requesting local landmark designation for 7100 Boca Ciega Drive. It was built approximately 1941, and it is a contributing residential property in the Corey Avenue historic neighborhood. This is the first property in the Corey neighborhood that we are so is coming before you for designation. The survey was just, as you know, completed within the last month of the entire area that was the township of St. Petersburg Beach. As previously noted, the residence was constructed in 1941. It's basically Mediterranean revival in style with some ranch influence, and you can see that in the photograph. This particular property reflects the broad cultural history of St. Pete Beach and Corey Avenue area, and it embodies distinctive, visible characteristics of the Mediterranean revival architectural style, period, and method of construction. 7100 Boca Ciega Drive appears to be in good condition from the exterior view. However, the property did sustain historic interior damage due to the interior flooding that the property had. I think that there were some photographs that showed some of the damage to the interior. Staff recommends that this contributing residential structure be recognized as a locally designated historic landmark because it is a significant and well-maintained property that retains the integrity, and it's also an excellent representation of the Corey Avenue area architecture. No work is proposed for this property at this time, and no specific preservation treatments have been identified. Staff is recommending approval of the local historic designation of 7100 Boca Drive because it reflects the broad cultural history of St. Pete Beach and the Corey Avenue area, and it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of the Mediterranean Revival architectural style period and method of construction. Be glad to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does the applicant want to speak at all? Please approach and state your name for the record, please.
Lisa Robinson, 7100 Boca Drive. The property did receive damage interior-wise, and I am fixing that up, trying to recreate what I had before, which was basically the hardwood floors, keeping all baseboards as the larger baseboards to kind of go with that whole Mediterranean style. The plaster walls were still intact, so did not take those down. The only change was really, or as far as walls coming down, or not walls coming down, but drywall coming out was in the kitchen area.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Robinson? All right, anybody have a motion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 25105 to designate primary residence and detached garage at 7100 Boca Drive as a local historic structure.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Okay, 4E, local historic designation number 25120 for the 4-unit apartment building at 123rd Avenue.
You could pull up the PowerPoint, please. So the applicant and owner for this request is Brian Lynch of Tyler and Riley LLC. The property address is 123rd Avenue. This is a request for both the primary 4-unit apartment building and the 1-story cottage located at the subject property. You can see here an aerial, a survey of the property. The footprint of the buildings are relatively well preserved from their original development. It's actually their centennial this year, built in 1925. There was an addition to the cottage on the south side. I don't have a year for that. It was just a small porch addition. It was several decades ago, but the frontages of both of these structures have been very well preserved. A little hard to see on the screen, but the 1936 property card is at the top left, showing the sketch and the footprint of these structures. You do see them without the, or you see the cottage rather on the left side without the porch on the south side of it. At the time, the front of the structure was used as a garage. There was a very small maid quarter at the back, and then there was the 4-unit apartment building to the east of it. You can see the Sanborn map from 1948 in the center showing those two structures, again without that small porch, but again that's away from the frontage. It's not directly visible from the street. And you can see a 1972 aerial of the property showing those structures as well. I'm not certain if he actually lived in the building at any point in time, but the building is, the main apartment building is named after Russell Church Jr. He participated in World War II. He was killed in the Philippines in 1941. They were referenced in the 2003 Boundary Increase historic narrative as Paso Gril's first death within the war. And they did receive the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest ranking Army award to my understanding. And you can see his family there at the bottom of the screen. Again, I'm not certain if Russell Church Jr. actually lived in this structure, but his family did own it for a long period of time in the mid-century. You can see here some Florida Master Site file photos at the corner of these structures, so at the northeast side of the main apartment building. That porch was enclosed at some point. Historic preservationists usually look at that as a modest impact to the structure because it usually can be reversed. Other than that, the jetty, the other features of the structure are relatively well preserved from its original development. And then you can see the staff photos that were taken just a few weeks ago, very modest alterations to the structure. The shutters at the frontage on the east side have been slightly modified. The ones that are on the north side still have that chevron pattern, the shutter pattern on the north side that's been slightly modified on the east. So just looking forward, we would look for that chevron pattern to be maintained on the shutters on the windows. And then you can see very modest improvements to the cottage as well. The primary apartment building did not sustain substantial damage. The owner has obtained a permit for renovation to the interior of the structure. The cottage did sustain substantial damage. That is pending designation through this action to be able to be renovated and retained at grade. And speaking with the applicant earlier today, they do plan to remediate the interior damage to the structure, but they do not foresee any exterior changes to either of these buildings. The permit that has been obtained for the main apartment building does not involve any exterior significant changes, just painting and maintaining the finish. So we do support this application to locally designate the structures. That would be both the cottage as well as the apartment building as local historic resources. The owner was not able to make it today, but I did speak. I did receive an email today, which I'll read into the record. Addressing these questions, starting with the remediation of damage, as I mentioned before, they did both sustain interior flood damage, non-substantial to the main apartment building, substantial to the cottage. Foundation and the exterior remained intact and structurally sound, which we did document. The owner is committed to remediating the interior damage, repairs to flooring, finishes, and any affected systems, ensuring the buildings remain safe, livable, and historically appropriate. They do not foresee any exterior alterations. The goal is preservation, not replacement. Existing stucco decorative shutters, which are non-functional, and historic architectural features will be retained. Any exterior improvements will be limited to restoration and maintenance. They will be replacing them in appropriate colors and repairing decorative elements as needed. And they do plan to keep the units, the buildings as of 5 total units. That's 4 within the primary structure, 1 within the cottage. That is consistent with the current use, reflected in its business tax receipt, and they've been used that way for many decades. There are no plans to reduce or expand the number of units. So I feel that did address our questions. I don't foresee any reason for this case to be denied. We do feel that they've done a good job preserving them. We want to see them preserved into the future. Because the owner was not present, we just asked that action be taken today, but that listing on the registry be deferred until we get that actual designation from the owner. They're working on getting their notarized signature. They just were not able to be here today, and we don't allow for agent request for local designation. It needs to come directly from the owner. But we do ask for approval contingent on getting that owner authorization. Any questions from the board?
Did they say are they going to go with the mint chocolate chip or the pumpkin latte? Which both, I like both of them. I really, really do. I hope they come up with something new that'll be equally stunning. But no, I love that building. All right. Anybody have anything to add or questions? All right. I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to the owner's signature, I guess, being finalizing that, for local historic designation for the 4-unit, I guess it's actually 5-unit, a 4-unit apartment building and 1-story cottage residence at 123rd Avenue, and that is case number 25120.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hoggensmith?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. All right, moving on. Subsection 5, discussion items. The first item is 5A, the design review for 207 Gulf Way.
Thank you, Chair. If we could pull up the PowerPoint. So this is a new home. Sorry, it says 204 Gulf Way. It's 207. Sarah Sullivan of DHM Construction is present as the applicant. This is a design review of a new house, small structure. You can see here the proposed site plan. This is a property that currently obtains access through an easement from the north. It goes through private property. There is an easement, private easement through private property to access the rear of the lot. That will be retained. There will be no frontage access. You can see that it's a very small lot. It's under 4,000 square feet. We don't see many of these designs, but this would fall under the house small design criteria. They have reduced setbacks in both the front and the rear. They maintain the 5-foot setback of the house medium, which would be able to be reduced to as low as 3, but this is the design that they have advanced. You can see we have worked with the applicant. Our design consultant, Tara Salmieri, had a call with them a few weeks ago, made a few recommendations. You can see the modification to the front facade at the top of the screen, and then you can see the rear facade on the bottom. They have modified the exterior material to provide the vinyl on the ground floor. They have also made some modifications to the secondary frontage, which is the north side, the left side of the upper image. And you can see here these sides of the structure and the minor alterations that were made recently to the floor plans as well as the exterior of the structure.
Do we have an elevation of the modifications?
So the modification is the top image. We did not.
That's the newest one.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I was confused. All right, gotcha.
Mhm. Staff had a few design comments specifically from our design consultant. Most of those have been addressed. She did ask, reviewing the image that was just shown, the most up-to-date design front facade image, that secondary front element should have the support column step back to provide a more articulated massing. I'll see if I can reference what I'm talking about there. The columns on the secondary mast toward the north side, the left side of the top image, just stepping that back, having a railing run alongside and connect in, just providing effectively a 12-inch or greater offset, which I believe is what they're currently providing, would help with that articulation of that mass on the north side. They have otherwise redesigned the structure to meet her comments. Zoning's only comment, I know they have very limited land at the front there. I believe they have a 5-foot setback from the closest point, but the required frontage landscaping does need to be set within the property boundary. That's just a zoning requirement based on the schematics that were submitted so far. It was located what appeared to be in the right of way, so it would just need to be stepped back, and that's something we can address at building permit review.
And on that point, just so I don't have it in front of me, but so it's a very unique lot, I think that's the word, and I think you said they have access from the north, but isn't it from the east? They come in from the alley, right?
No, they come in from the street. They have an access that goes through the neighbor's yard.
Which street do they come in off
They
of?
come in off Third.
Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. It's behind, yeah, I'm right, I gotcha. Okay. So because of the size of the lot, the setback in the front is what, just 5 feet? Is that what you said?
It's just 5 feet.
That's
Yes.
like from the sidewalk?
It's interior to the sidewalk. It is approximately 6 feet from the wall to the property line, so it would be about 11 feet, I believe, to the closest element of the
Oh, okay.
residence
Okay, right.
from the sidewalk.
I was concerned that they were really jamming them in there, but that seems like there's obviously enough room to do
There-
what they need to do.
There is a masonry wall at the front that appears to be within the property boundary, but it's actually set further back from that. That will be maintained, but the structure is set back further than would be expected.
Does the applicant want to speak? This is where we're really going to get into it now, okay? All right, anybody have any questions for Mr. Berry or the applicant who's present? All right, well, this is just our design review, so does anybody have an issue or anything they want to comment or bring up to the applicant? I would like to say, I do like the roof line, that it is getting away from that totally square look we're getting so much of, and I appreciate that there's a little bit difference in that. It's just my opinion. Otherwise, this is just for informational purposes, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any permissions or anything that need to be granted from the neighbor with regard to the easement?
No, we'll ask for the easement at the building permit stage, but I'm sure that, typically it's just a maintained private easement. They're not asking for any encroachments or any other variances to the code.
Easement was actually given to them when they had the house before the storm, and the house that was there was taken down because of the damage of the storm. So it's the same easement, and it fits within the boundaries of the house.
Can you just do me a favor, just for the record? Would you just state your name? You don't have to come forward.
My name is Dan Moore with DHM Construction. I'm representing the owner.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well then, let's move on then. Thank you. 5B, the yearly education, elevation of residences in flood-prone areas.
If we could pull up the other PowerPoint, please, and Lynn will be presenting on this.
I hope I have better luck now with this. It's charged up a bit. So this is actually the second workshop that we've had on the Historic Board CLG training and education type workshops. It was last May 2nd of 2024, when I did the first installation of it, thinking that probably by now I would be done with the series that I was going to be presenting to you. But that wasn't to be, thanks to Helene and Milton. In any case, this is number 2, and I'm just going to go over a couple of brief concepts that we talked about in the first presentation, since that was May 2nd of 24. Okay, just in general, and this is dealing with, of course, flooding issues and historic properties. And in general, the risk of flooding has long been a major challenge for many historic properties and communities. Changing weather patterns, stronger hurricanes, other extreme weather events, sea level rise, nuisance flooding, king tides, and continuing development in floodplains are some of the causes of flooding. And flooding events are occurring at an increased frequency and magnitude. And I think we had our fill of flooding, both out on the beaches and even on the mainland. Whoops. So we did talk about resiliency, and that's just like coastal resilience. It's building has an ability to bounce back after hazardous events, such as hurricanes, coastal storms, and flooding, rather than simply reacting to impacts. And this comes from NOAA. And in addition, it also, St. Pete Beach has a sustainability action plan that we went over back last May and discussed it a bit. NOAA states that a community that is more informed and prepared will have a greater opportunity to rebound quickly from weather and climate-related events, including adapting to sea level rise. And this was just showing, this was from the first presentation, showing some of the types of water threats we have in St. Pete Beach. And a lot of it involves street flooding during the day. We know that we have issues with some of the storm drainage patterns and also king tides and as such. We found out a lot about storm surge inundation last fall, and then some of the other issues dealing with flooding. So, vulnerability assessment. We discussed before that we have flash flooding where dozens of locations throughout the city are subject to some flash flooding caused by heavy rainfall during a short period of time. King tides, those are astronomical and growing worse due to sea level rise. And sea level rise is a long-term phenomena, and it's been accelerating. We know it's been accelerating because over in Tampa Bay, there's a station that keeps track. It's been keeping track since the early 1940s, and sea level rise is occurring in Tampa Bay. So that stands to reason that it's also going to be affecting the Gulf of Mexico and the beaches. Storm surge also is an issue, making us very vulnerable here on the beach. You know, it's where normally dry land flooding is caused by hurricane, and it's an abnormal rise of water generated by a storm. So, historic preservation in flood-prone areas, and there is a publication out recently that we had talked about, and that's the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic properties within flood-prone areas. And properties that are within flood-prone areas are increasingly being impacted by flooding. And also, there are ways that the Secretary of Interior standards will make allowances for properties that are within these flood-prone areas. Certain advantages that are not held by places that are not in areas that are subject to flooding on a regular basis. So decisions may someday be necessary to decide what will be saved for future generations and what is technically possible, but there is an allocation of finite resources. Current efforts are underway to historically survey much of St. Pete Beach to ultimately identify those historic resources citywide that should be protected along with the existing known historic resources. I want to back us just one second. Okay. This is typical of some of what we may be taking a look at in the future. This shows the process of elevating a building. The small house is shown before, during, and after being raised on temporary steel beams and braced with cribbing as the concrete block foundation is built below before being set down on the new foundation. The building will require additional design and masking of the change in height. So those are some things that are being done now. This slide deals with showing that it really can be challenging to elevate ranch houses, which generally sit close to the grade or on grade, more than the nominal amount without impacting their historic character and appearance if you were to try to elevate it. So this is showing the probable limits of elevating a ranch-style house. This is probably up about 4.5 or 5 feet. It may be able to go a little bit more, but the entire character of a ranch house would suffer or would start to become unrecognizable as a ranch if it's elevated too much. So I have been calling around to people I know in preservation about if they knew of any neighborhoods somewhere in Florida that had ranch-style houses that were affected by flooding at one point. And this is especially because of the Don Cesar Place neighborhood and also North Beach, to a lesser extent, Bella Vista. But these all have mid-century modern type houses. A lot of them are ranch style or slab on grade. And how do we deal with those? And although I haven't talked to them yet, I did find out that St. Augustine during Hurricane Ivan had an area that was done, the name of it is Davis something, I'm not sure, but same developer of Davis Island over in Tampa. And this was a community that was, like I said, was hit hard by Ivan, and they were discussing a lot of what do we do? What do we do with the ranches? Because, you know, you start to elevate them, how do you protect their character, but get them out of harm's way as well, at least unless it's a superstorm. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking into, and when I find out something, I'll come back and report it to you on what, you know, they recommended and how they are maybe regulating these houses, because a lot of them had the same issues with a lot of flooding and damage caused by Hurricane Ivan. This is another type of example of a house that was on grade, and it's been elevated up a little bit, I think about 5 feet. This is probably about as high as this house can be lifted and still maintain its historic character, because the more you elevate a house, the more its character can be destroyed. But they were able to keep the character of the house, add stairway and railings, and the house is still recognizable as a historic house. This is, I know we don't have these kind of Queen Anne's here, but the point of this, and this was in Wheeling, West Virginia, what they did was they had berms that were already in existence, and they built on top of them, and then they added a little bit more to them with the flooding that was going on in this area. Crazy enough, this area and that street was inundated by 33 floods between the 1860s and the 1960s. And during this period, the buildings on the island were constructed on tall foundations or were lifted onto higher foundations, berms, and like after the flood events. So, taking a look at the Queen Anne, some of these considerations that they looked at were topography and landscaping, the shape and size of the lot, placement and setbacks of the building on the site, the building footprint in relation to the shape and size of the lot, massing and form, including the existing overall width to height ratio, building height and number of floors, horizontal or vertical orientation, property type, construction type, relative visibility of foundation or basement, and the mass of foundation in comparison to the main mass of the building. So these were some of the things that they took into consideration. And when you go to elevate historic properties, there are also technical limitations. I mean, you can raise anything, but whether it keeps the character or not really can come into question. So the historic building must be structurally stable and or repaired or temporarily reinforced in order to be raised onto a new foundation. There must be a structural system that can support the building on temporary cribbing while a new foundation is constructed. For example, buildings in which a structural slab also functions as the floor or subfloor do not have a platform that would support the walls when lifted. The building must be able to be physically separated from neighborhood buildings, although attached buildings that are one structure can be elevated together. Constrained sites may control how high a building can be elevated due to limited space available to construct or extend stairs to provide access. And the foundation type, open versus closed, may be prescribed by the local ordinance. And what we want to say too is, as I think we know, one of the things that the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation allows, and FEMA also allows, is a relief from the required elevation of a building, as, you know, what the flood maps would dictate. So, you know, some of our historic buildings, we may be able to elevate them to get them more out of harm's way, but in a manner that doesn't have to meet the total requirement of the FEMA elevation regulations. So those are some things I think in the future we will need to be talking about and considering. Okay, the end.
I was going to say,
Looking to see if I've got anything else I wanted to.
you kind of hit that, or summed it up nice at the end, because that's something on Paso Grill that I think is important, and I'm not sure all the citizens that have older homes recognize it. I think I mentioned it before, but, you know, in general, the FEMA elevation in general for off-grade in Paso Grill is about 6 feet, I'm going to say, maybe give or take a foot, 6 or 7 feet. Which means if a house is historically designated, it could be raised 3 feet, 4 feet, still maintain the historic look, yet really be out of 99, well, would have been out of the flood area, the flooding of Helene. As I said, there's some of the really old houses that were built in the teens didn't get flooded because they were built 4 feet, 4.5 feet off the ground, which they, and it was, you know, the mid-century moderns that were built on slab that got most of the damage. So, you know, we have some room, and I'm just concerned sometimes that some of the people think, oh, I've got to knock my house down because I have to go FEMA, you know, I have to go as high as FEMA wants me to, as opposed to getting historically designated and just going up 2 feet or 3 feet or whatever they're comfortable with, you know, you know, as far as what they think the flooding is going to be like. You know, hopefully this is a 1 in 100 year storm. So,
And there are also interior things, we can do another workshop on this later, but there are also interior things that you can do to your house to make it a little more resilient to water damage.
and let me ask you this. So we always talk about this, if a house gets too much historic house gets too much change to it, or it gets raised too high, it might lose its historical look. Who's the arbitrator of deciding that? Because obviously in today's world, we're going to have houses bigger, and, you know, which we didn't have to do that 20 years ago as far as historically. Is that a national, you know, guideline that says, oh, this house, because it's been raised 5 feet or 6 feet, no longer retains its historical look, or is it us making that decision?
It's probably a combination. That's why last year I brought to your attention the Secretary of Interior standards that have for properties, historic properties in flood-prone areas. That was not existent until about 4 years ago.
Gotcha.
And so the federal government said, okay, you know, we recognize that there are historic properties. And so consequently, I think that would really be at the purview of this board.
Right.
And, you know, as we get into things, we did meet with an architect who was representing somebody in the Don Cesar neighborhood who has a ranch-style house on Lazarillo Park. And then when you look at the park, you can see that most of the houses around there are mostly ranch on grade or something similar to that. And that was where we started thinking, and I started making phone calls around the state of Florida to see if people how they were dealing with maybe elevating ranch-style houses, some to get out of harm's way, but still try to keep that look, you know, because a ranch house certainly does have a straightforward look. And a lot of folks, especially in that neighborhood, don't want to have expressed to me that they don't want to see more monolithic, big, tall buildings, because they love, like people from Paso Grill and people from probably North Beach and everywhere on the island, love their neighborhoods and their historic properties. And I think sometimes, maybe they feel defeated if they've had damage and they don't know where to go. And they just, kind of throw up their hands and say, well, I don't know how I'm going to get relief from this. But I think the Secretary of Interior Standards can help with that, and staff will be working to maybe start coming up with some more guidelines and finding out what other places are doing and how it's working out, especially with properties that are at grade. Some of the Paso Grill houses are much easier to raise because they may not have that solid ranch type foundation. They would be easier to elevate.
I think we did have a case maybe last year or the year before of like a Mediterranean revival on Paso Grill Way, and they had done some exterior improvements and some exterior additions. And then again and again, we asked, there is actually a formula for the percentage at which we've surpassed minor alterations and we're into this is no longer the same house. So I'm sure there's a formula, height and width, some sort of ratio formula for when you get it this high, it's no longer within that standard ratio for that design.
I think I know which house you're talking about. But, I think that was before the Secretary of Interior Standards came out, dealing with flood-prone properties.
I don't believe our application had anything to do with flood damage. It was well before that started.
Well, I was going to say, last month we had the house where they're taking, it was a single-story block house. I wouldn't call it a ranch, but they're now using that house to be the foundation for the second floor, which is pretty, is probably economical, but also a good way to kind of retain, some semblance of an older home, even though I guess it would no longer be historic. Although, do we have to make it? I don't know. We haven't really made a decision on that, or it has been brought to us for that, right? I mean, was it historically designated beforehand?
It was contributing. So in the next survey, the surveyor would judge that. Typically, those level of roof line variations, adding another story would typically render it non-contributing, but we'll see.
But I don't know in the long run what makes a difference. It's all a visual thing, you know what I mean? So if the house, it beats having a 3-story shoebox. So if people can do that,
Sure, yeah.
it may not remain historic, but it still fits into the neighborhood. The historic aspect of the neighborhood. So.
But those Secretary of Interior Standards show some liberalization of FEMA regulations by the federal government. And, that's one of the reasons why I started going through that book, and I'm going to be doing a few more presentations for you. I had hoped to be done by now because we started in May 24, and I was going to do them like every 3 months. And
I think we all recognize.
We all recognize that, yeah.
Back from everything.
Yeah.
9 months anyway. All right, thank you, Lynn. That was
You're
very
welcome.
informative. Okay, so now we're at 5C, Design Guidebook Update.
So we are working on the introduction. Thank you for the members who have sent over your recommended structures and elevations and modifications that we'll include in the book. I'm working on the introduction. I've had to take a few weeks for other priorities, but we're open to have something for you next month or at the latest the month after. And I know our design consultant is working on the background matter for that. So.
If we, and again, I appreciate everything you're doing, that kind of thing. Will we be able to, once there's something like a rough draft together, will that be sent to us, and we can, as soon as it's done, regardless of when the next meeting is, so we can email back, or so by the next meeting we can also already have kind of a discussion about it. Is that your plan to do it that way, kind of?
That was the plan, yes.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Okay, 5D, city-owned historic resource updates.
No update on this, unfortunately. I spoke to our facilities manager this morning. We're still working with FEMA on getting their evaluations completed, and from there we'll move it on to City Commission for guidance.
So, but as far as like Mary Pier, the Shuffleboard Clubhouse, are there, and that may be a different, maybe that's the same thing you're talking about, I don't know, but I know there was some bidding. Have those closed yet, or what's the status on those, if you know?
I'm not certain it's closed, but we did receive bids.
Okay,
so,
well, that's a
yeah.
good sign, all right. Okay, anybody have any other questions about that on the updates? All right. So now we go on to E5E, the museum update.
So Monday mornings from 9 to 10, the museum is hosting Gardening Angels. So Holly showed up there one morning, I showed up another Monday. We were not supposed to be there at the same time, so so that worked out well. But anyone in the public or on the board obviously is welcome to come and do some weeding and gardening on Monday mornings. And there's the native plant folks are doing a beautiful job there, all saltwater resilient and drought resistant and historic
Very interesting.
plants. It's a good learning experience for all of us. So I'd love to have them come and speak at one of our meetings because they do have historic plants there as well that we've had on the island for ages and ages.
Deb Rothenberg?
Yes.
You're referring to? Yeah.
Yep.
What I found was so interesting is that everything that's in the garden was there before the storms and made it through. So I am highly encouraging anybody that's wanting to redo their yards to go check out the museum and see. There are some beautiful plants there that you just wouldn't have thunk that they would have made it through being saturated with salt water. And we're not talking about palm trees and things, we're talking plants, flowering plants. And I just think it's a good idea for anybody that's redoing their yards to go down there and check it out before they actually make selections on plants.
I'll say this too, I think it's interesting because I've volunteered a few times when they're doing the dune cleanup for some of those things. And the other day I was walking and I noticed there was a whole bunch of sand spurs that were growing in the area. And so I called and I said, hey, can we get rid of those? And it's like, unfortunately, those aren't invasive. Those are natural.
Those are native.
plants. And it's like, so unless they're like in a walkway, the sand spurs get to stay. And I was like, no, darn it.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
I was just telling someone the other day who grew up in the same neighborhood with me here in St. Petersburg that remember we couldn't go anywhere on Saturday morning until our chores were done, and one of those chores were pulling the sand spurs in the front yard. And when I moved to Germany, they're selling sand spurs for like 7 marks a piece in IKEA, and I'm thinking I could have made a killing.
Just pick them off your clothes. Right, and sell them. Right. Yeah, but I would, on the sand spur issue, I don't think they're around as much as they used to, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just not in the dunes anymore. But
They would, because the museum's closed and not doing tours there, obviously, we did talk about the possibility of having some garden tours. Keep an eye on the museum calendar and website for fall events that are coming up. And the lighting ceremony at the museum will be December 7th, which is a Sunday. And we'll also have the gingerbread house decorating event there, tree lighting and ornament making, so that's open to the public. And the gingerbread is a fundraiser for the museum.
and will that be all exterior? I mean, what are they
All out
talking
in the
about any time
garden.
when they're
We did it last year in the garden because we were
Right.
doing
That's
it in the
fine.
Dewey, and that was not opened yet. So we just did it in the garden, and it was beautiful.
Do
having
they
it
have
there.
any feeling for when the interior itself will be? I mean, I don't have any idea. I mean, it's a city, or you just might know. I mean, is it?
They're still waiting for county approval, it's my
All right.
understanding. There's certain
All right.
things to be done.
Okay. Okay, 5F, update on 100 Pastor Girl Way.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to the board, because this did come for design review, I believe back in May or April. It's been some time now. They've continued the case a few times. They've slightly redesigned. They had eliminated any kind of frontage variance that had been requested for. They had the porches and the balconies and the trellis that were extending into the front yard. They did retain the southwestern building setback into the alleyway. They had applied for, but ultimately were denied by the Board of Adjustment for the staircase, but they were approved for the square footage increase and for that southwestern building encroachment toward the alleyway. That was at last week's Board of Adjustment meeting. I just wanted to let the board know we had brought that in for design review. There were some conditions that did somewhat limit the interior square footage, but it wasn't a significant change in massing or scale to what this board saw. The buildings were just moved back interior to the courtyard. So I have not received the site plan for that yet, but they were approved for the variances that they retained. I just wanted to let the board know. I also wanted to mention, I do not have an update on 702 Paso Grill Way, but I will have an update for you next month. So.
Okay. Now, on 100 Paso Grill Way, I know we've done a design review, and I know you just mentioned that the changes aren't overly significant, and I know that we don't have a lot of history with the design review, and usually one time is enough kind of scenario, but does the city have an idea? I mean, will we get another look at the plans at some point, or, and if you say no, I understand, but I'm just talking about, sometimes there can be a significant difference with the plan, and you wonder, when we're included, because I know it's kind of at the grace of the city, and when it's not included. So do we ever really look that through or thought about that?
So typically when they go to variance, Board of Adjustment for something like this, it's, what they approve is what ultimately needs to be applied for. But if there are significant facade changes or feature changes, we will definitely bring that back to you.
So, right. So just to talk about using that as an example, if, for example, the Board of Adjustment had not granted variances and they had to redo their plans fairly significantly, would we have got a design review later? That would be an example.
You would have, yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Did I hear you say they were able to maintain the square footage of the interior of the smaller cottages? Where they were doubling?
No, I'm sorry. They maintained what was presented to this board. They were approved for the square footage that they brought forward. The only modifications of significance since that project was presented to this board was that the buildings were moved back to meet the setbacks along the frontages. So
the buildings that originally had 500 square foot, one bedroom apartments in them now have 2-story, 500 square foot.
It's less than that. The 500 is measured from the exterior walls. The actual usable interior square footage is, I believe, 840 square feet. They had 475 previously. That's the standard as adopted in the code. We look at the interior usable square footage.
But we allowed them to double their size?
That was the variance granted by the Board of Adjustment. Yes, was to go from 475 to.
From now on, we can do renovations and upgrades to multifamily properties on Paso Grill and enlarge their size. We don't have to adhere to the square footage requirement.
Any request like that would still be subject to variance. They had made the case to the board, and the board accepted that case. If it's something that the board would like to discuss, obviously we have those pending modifications to the overlay. If we want to talk about, I think what was originally brought forward back in 2017 when we modified the code most recently was originally allowing for some building code livability update and increase of, I believe Tara mentioned to me 10 to 20% compared to the existing square footage. Florida Building Code does not require much in terms of square footage to have a livable unit. It's just a couple hundred square feet, but that livability update would respect some of those structures that were built such a long time ago that rebuilding them at the square footage that they currently have would be a challenge. Currently, any request like that would require a variance, but I'd be happy to bring it back to discuss with the board.
But now there's precedence.
Right, because as I recall, the property on 14th Avenue was a 4-unit or 5-unit apartment building, 2 stories or so, on a double lot that was demolished because he was told he couldn't rebuild and have these units of different sizes than they were existing. And yet now we could go ahead before the Board of Adjustment and request it, and there's a possibility that we would get the variance.
It's eligible for variance, yes.
Well, on that unit you're talking about on 14th, did they attempt to get variances on that?
The owner had stated that he had requested and tried to get information about rebuilding, and he was going to, I believe, enlarge the size of the units a little bit.
I remember all that. I just didn't know.
I don't know if he went to Board of Adjustment or not. I don't know if it was suggested or not.
Right. I mean, I recall a little bit about that he was told, I think, by the city manager that per code he couldn't do that, but I didn't know if he took the extra step to get a variance. I was at the meeting. I mean, it was, whatever, they did it. A question I have though, out of that, just because I meant to ask, obviously I didn't have an opportunity to question
Sorry.
anything at that meeting, but they were talking about, I think it was like having a powdered room for an ADA, you know what I'm talking about, on the first level or something like that?
Yes, correct.
Like on the garage first level?
No, that's on the first living level. That is a Fair Housing Act requirement that there be a accessible bathroom on the first living level.
For all residences or for the type of what they were building?
So as I understand it, as it was presented last week, if the entire living space were on one floor, the entire space would need to be Fair Housing Act compliant. If it is split between two levels, there does need to be a powder room on the first living level, but the upper story does not need to be Fair Housing Act
Well, I mean,
compliant.
as a matter of reality, I think everybody does have a bathroom on the first level. I mean, that's what we normally typically see, but they were using it in a way to suggest that that couldn't go towards their overall square footage because they had to do it. Was that kind of one of the arguments they had?
Correct. That was part of the argument because they had to have that bathroom on the ground floor. That should not have counted against the square footage. And that was, staff had worked through it with them at Technical Review Committee. There were some recommendations that we had made relative to that. The additional space that needed to be included within the structure, the powder room, counting that against it, the vertical circulation elements, the stairs. There was still a gap of about 200 square feet, and that was what they justified at the hearing.
Right, but I guess I was just thinking now that you mentioned that. So, and I'm not trying to, beat a dead horse. I know the decision's been made, but so the suggestion potentially would be is if we didn't have to, we wouldn't have a bathroom on this floor. We'd all go upstairs to use the bathroom, which is fairly silly. I mean, I'm talking more for future use when we look at that as being not an excuse, but an explanation or interpretation where this square footage doesn't count because we have to put an ADA compliant bathroom on the first floor, as if they would actually walk to the second floor to go to the bathroom in reality. So I'm just commenting on that because I didn't know what that meant. I was trying to figure out while the discussion was being made exactly how they were using that, and that's what I suspected. But
We did ask about the potential to move forward with different layouts, and that was one of the items we asked them to address last week, which if they were to modify the units such that there was one unit on the first living floor, one unit above in each of the buildings, whether that would make a difference. And they had justified to the board that would not have made a difference in square footage. So
this won't be coming before the commission then, obviously, at this point, because it's made it through Board of Adjustment.
right, they will have to resubmit for a site plan that will go through Technical Review Committee, but it will not go onto the commission.
And-
unless somebody appeals it, all that, the appeal time might run, but, yeah.
And appeals would go to circuit court, not to the city court.
I'm not sure, but we haven't done anything like that. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's neither here nor there for our discussion today. I'm just commenting on what Danielle said.
And just out of curiosity, because I know that we had talked about a while ago that anytime there's a named storm, I believe within 100 miles of our coastline, you can't do a stay of building on anything. So are we coming up to a year of?
So the initial passage of Senate Bill 180 is through until October 2027. Moving forward after that, it's within, it's a year following, I believe. Is that correct?
I
Yes,
believe it's another year
extensive.
following it. It's extended, essentially, the limitations on local governments to be able to add further limitations.
Okay.
But I would just point out to the board, if anybody, is upset with what the Board of Adjustment did, then I would just suggest that, because, we can't talk to each other outside of this area right now. And, please go to those meetings. If you feel strongly about some of that stuff, because, there was maybe 10 citizens there, or maybe 4 of them spoke, and a lot of them just watched.
I do want to note there was some concern about precedents to the extent there's concern about that, variances are very specific.
Right.
The standards are very specific, and so each property moving forward is still going to be evaluated independently according to those standards. And I know that,
Yeah, and in fact, the board talked about that, about everything is unique, and they mentioned that. So, that's totally true as far as the precedent. It's every case is different. But I'm sure someone will mention it in the
But it does kind of feel like a wave. It's kind of like when a wave starts, where does it stop? And if we've started a wave, where does it end? And that's of concern.
It was a 3-to-1 vote, by the way, so there was someone missing and one voted against. All right, so what else? Anything else? Any more comments on that? Otherwise, is there anything else we need to cover today? Our next meeting is November 6th of 2025. With that being said, we're adjourned.